Good morning once again from Rotterdam. It's time for our daily coffee podcast, Koffietijd, as we say in the Netherlands. I'm going to try to teach you some Dutch words over the course of these weeks. They will get a bit not here as we proceed, probably, because I have Erik Bolks and Steef van Gorkum in the podcast each morning. Yesterday we saw the countries of the first semi-final, except for Malta, of course. They will come on stage first today, but all the other 15 nations, we saw them again, which made the best improvement compared to the first rehearsal run-throughs, Erik.
That must be definitely Ireland. Ireland was having big troubles in the first rehearsal round, and now things seem to fall into place a bit more than... You could see what was the concept and how they wanted it to be. It's still not perfect, but it's getting there. So Ireland for me.
Yeah, and Ireland was not the only one that we saw indeed make a step. They did their work in the last days and came back better yesterday for the second rehearsal.
Yes, I've spoken on this podcast before about countries, more and more countries having a concept when they get here, and then execution becomes more important. I think what we saw yesterday was a lot of countries working on their execution, especially the ones that didn't get it right the first time. Ireland's one of them, Croatia's another one, and there's a couple more.
It's a very interesting semi-final because there are many songs fishing in the same pool. Is that an English saying? Sorry?
In the same pound.
Fishing in the same pound, okay. Vissen in dezelfde vijver in Dutch. That's why this happened. A bit of Denglish in this podcast. Anyway, a lot of songs aiming for perhaps the same target audience, but most likely, very likely, they won't all be able, of course, to make it.
Yes, 6 of them actually, 6 solo female artists performing up-tempo songs. And they have a very large influence on this semi-final because the question looms over this entire show: how many of them will qualify and who of them will qualify, and that will shape up also, I think, the race for the other remaining spots in the semi-final.
Yeah, please share with us which 6 nations do you mean with this?
I'm talking about Australia, Cyprus, Croatia, Israel, Malta, and now I'm forgetting one. No, Latvia is the other semi-final, Eric.
So
Azerbaijan. Yes. Azerbaijan is the other one.
Could this say something that you forgot her?
That's the question we always ask ourselves, right? When we're listing songs in a certain show and we forget one, it's like, does this say something that we're forgetting this song? Might be. But the interesting thing is, I think that you can see it in the running order as well. This is not something that we just came up with. This is something that has made their way, this discussion point has made their way into the EBU room as well, because they gave these countries the starting positions 5, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And if you just listen carefully to this list of numbers that I just mentioned, then you can see that it's all the way up and down. They switched them off one by one because they basically had to break them up in some way, and it must have been a difficult job for them.
Statistically, how many of them could be able maximum to make it?
I think 4 is the absolute maximum out of these 6, and maybe 3 is more likely. I think that's the big question mark, because we have two of those 6 that are really standing out, Malta and Cyprus, in my opinion, but in the opinion of a lot of people, I think. And because those 2 are so strong, that makes it more likely that maybe one of the other ones qualifies, perhaps 2, but not more.
Yeah, because what Steve says, Malta and Cyprus, they could also take points away from the other girls, making it that some of these nations squeezed in between all those girls, like Belgium, to take one out, could make it through.
Belgium, for instance, or Slovenia, there's just a few ballots that can profit from this, yes. I totally agree what Steve just said.
Which of the female girls, apart from Malta and Cyprus, we're all pretty clear those 2 will make it. Which of them is in top of mind for you right now to make it as well?
In contradiction to what most people in the press center say, I would say Israel, because she seems to have fun on stage, and that's what comes across to the viewer.
What about Australia, Steve? We saw a bit more from Montaigne. Finally, of course, she's not here, sadly, in Rotterdam with us. We saw her backup tape. We couldn't hear the audio, but we saw the video footage. What impression did she make on you based on that?
It was a good impression, actually, and we didn't only see more from her, but we heard more from her as well. Not in terms of vocals, because we saw the live on tape without sound. But I spoke to her on the press conference, and she told me there that they actually put a lot of work into trying to make this performance look as much on the same stage as the other performances as possible. And the way they tried to do that was with a few lighting tricks. And I think they kind of work. They make the stage, the studio basically, where they performed it, let's be honest. They made it quite dark. They created some kind of disco light effect behind her. There's a very slick choreography with a few backing dancers there. And because of the fact that they use so many close-up shots, it makes it more difficult to see. Because if you would zoom out, obviously you would see that you're in a TV studio, but they hardly do that.
We have now spoken about all these up-tempo songs in the show. Because there are so many of them in this field, it makes a ballad, there are not a lot of them in the first semi-final, it makes it stand out just also because of that. I would say you have Norway, Romania, likely qualifiers. But usually we have at least 3 ballads making it to the Eurovision final from each semi-final. Which one could join them?
Well, if we reckon Sweden as a ballad, then they're lucky this time.
Not really.
It's the same with Norway. I would not call that a ballad. It was just a mid-tempo song. I consider only 3 songs a ballad, and that's North Macedonia, Slovenia, and Belgium. And out of these, I think only one, or perhaps 2, but I think only one will qualify. I would put my money on Slovenia because of the vocal quality, but maybe Belgium will stand out because it's purely basic filming, and they put music first, and no gimmicks, nothing. And it might be appealing to some people.
The fact that I said 3 ballads always make it from each semi-final is not something I just made up just now as I was drinking my coffee. It's something you, Steef, dug into a long time ago already, a few years ago. And only once, we have only seen one semi-final where it didn't happen, and we only had 2 ballads in the entire field making it. So it would be very unique if it would happen again.
It would. This is a study that I did in 2016. I put a lot of work into it back then, and I kept updating it afterwards. And I dug into the numbers again last night because we were having this discussion. And what I noticed was now basically there have been 22 semifinals since 2009 that I studied. And in that time, we've seen between 3 and 5 ballads qualify from a semifinal 18 out of 22 times. 3 times it happened that there were more than 5 ballads, and only once did it happen that we had less than 3 ballads. That was the second semi-final in 2018, which was a semi-final that only had 5 ballads.
Like this one.
Like this one, exactly. And this is why this comparison is so interesting, because this is a semi-final because of the low amount of ballads. That might be the exception to the rule, but in that second semi-final in 2018, you had 18 songs. Now you only have 16, which makes it more likely that a third one will sneak through.
Yeah, because there are less countries, so it's easier to qualify.
Exactly, and percentage-wise, that also makes it different. Like 2 ballads on 18 songs or 2 ballads on 16 songs is a different percentage.
We do our maths early in the morning in the Netherlands. That's how we roll. Wiskunde, yes, wiskunde, maths, wiskunde. For the whiz kids. Yes?
Yes.
Is that why we have...
That's why we call them...
Is that why we call it wiskunde? I don't know. Anyway, we will see way at the end of today, but you can follow it on in our live blog, of course, at escdaily.com, the page where you're also now on. Or you're listening to this on YouTube, also a possibility. We're gonna follow the first rehearsals of the finalists. They will come to Ahoy for the very first time. It's something to look forward to. Tomorrow, of course, we will talk in depth about what we saw from these 6 nations. For now, we're gonna talk about the expectations of these countries. Which one are you most eager to see?
I'm most eager to see Germany because I'm very curious on how they're going to put it on stage. But I think France will be the most impressive, as I have in my mind how they should film it, and if they do it like that, then they're completely running for victory.
You're not naming Italy now, but I know we spoke about it earlier this week, that you were very interested to see how they would interact with each other with the cameras now that there's not an orchestra, which helped them at Sanremo because they had such a natural chemistry with all the artists in that orchestra, and they are of course not here in Rotterdam.
And that's an interesting one as well, but you said most, so...
What about you?
I mean, yeah, Eric basically mentioned it. Of course, all of the community, all of the journalists are looking forward to France and Italy because both are so high up with the bookmakers. We have that top 6 with the bookies now, and they're both in it. So it makes it really interesting. And Germany is the wild card, I would say, because I don't reckon that as a good song. Right now I have it somewhere at the bottom of my list, but because we all know that he has that kind of chemistry, and because he, as a male solo artist with an upbeat song and a very cheerful and happy song, if he then does it well and shows off that chemistry, that could be the wild card, let's say, in this final, and the surprise.
So far the speculations, we're gonna see what they will deliver. Of course, the same goes for the United Kingdom, Spain and the Netherlands. We will talk about them later on tomorrow morning when we have seen their first rehearsal, and hopefully they can surprise, and they will all 6 be very good. That would be amazing, right? That would make a great final when the big 5 delivers. It gets the level. It's good for the entire level of the final. So that would be nice if that would be happening. Enjoy your day with us. We're on top of things in Ahoy, and we will talk more about the finalists and what else will be happening in Ahoy tomorrow morning. Stay tuned.